You need to leave this property.
Excuse me, I live here.
The homeowner reported someone's trespassing.
I am the homeowner. This is my
The caller said the owner is an elderly white woman. You don't exactly fit that description, do you?
The caller is wrong.
Sure.
Officer Derek Ramsey had been with the Memphis Police Department for 4 years, and in those 4 years, he'd compiled a record that should have raised immediate concerns. 6 complaints, all 6 involving accusations that black residents didn't belong in predominantly white neighborhoods. A man walking his dog in East Memphis stopped and questioned about where he lived. A teenager skateboarding in Germantown, detained for trespassing on public sidewalks. A woman watering her lawn in Chickasaw Gardens, asked for proof of residence. Each complaint ended identically. Conflict resolution training that Ramsey attended but never internalized. One Sunday morning in Memphis, his pattern of assuming black people didn't belong in affluent areas finally confronted someone who'd spent 3 decades earning her place in that exact neighborhood. And that confrontation would end Ramsey's career, cost the city $2,900,000, and expose a department that had ignored 6 identical complaints in 4 years. A black woman in her late 50s, Dr. Simone Hartley, was standing in the driveway of her modest single-story home, checking her mailbox on a quiet Sunday morning, her car keys in her hand after returning from early morning hospital rounds. No crime, no trespassing, no violation, just a physician checking her mail at her own house. But Officer Ramsey saw her through a filter so distorted by assumptions about who belongs in expensive neighborhoods that he couldn't process a black woman as a legitimate homeowner, couldn't imagine that success and property ownership weren't limited by the racial boundaries Ramsey enforced in his mind, and couldn't accept that the person he was about to confront had more right to be on that property than Ramsey had to be questioning her. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Memphis, Tennessee. Central Gardens, an historic neighborhood known for elegant homes dating back to the 1922nd. Tree-lined streets with canopies so thick they create tunnels of shade, and property values that reflect both the architectural beauty and the prestige of the address. The area is predominantly white, affluent, and protective of its exclusivity in ways both spoken and unspoken. It was 8:45 on a Sunday morning in September. The air was still cool before the Tennessee heat would settle in later. Church bells rang in the distance. A few neighbors were out walking dogs or retrieving newspapers, the kind of peaceful Sunday morning where nothing dramatic typically happens. Dr. Simone Hartley had been a cardiologist at Baptist Memorial Hospital for 28 years. 28 years of saving lives, performing procedures, teaching residents, building a reputation as one of the most skilled interventional cardiologists in the Mid-South. She'd completed medical school at Vanderbilt, residency at Johns Hopkins, fellowship in interventional cardiology at Cleveland Clinic. She'd published research. She'd served on hospital boards. She'd trained a generation of younger physicians. Her patients trusted her. Her colleagues respected her. Hospital administrators valued her. Simone had grown up in Memphis, the daughter of immigrants who'd opened a small restaurant downtown. She'd watched her parents work 16-hour days, scraping together enough to send her to college. She'd been the first in her family to attend medical school. She'd worked her way through every level of training with a combination of brilliance and relentless work ethic. By the time she was 40, she was an established cardiologist. By 50, she was one of the top in her field in Memphis. 12 years ago, she'd purchased the house in Central Gardens, a well-maintained one-story home with a brick foundation, a covered front porch, and a small but carefully tended yard. She'd paid cash, the reward for decades of 100-hour weeks and careful financial planning. She'd made it her sanctuary, the place she came home to after days that often started at 5 a.m. and ended near midnight. Her neighbors had been polite when she moved in, some friendly, some distant. A few had made comments over the years that carried undertones she recognized. Surprise that she was a doctor, questions about whether she lived alone, assumptions about how she could afford the house. Simone had learned to navigate these microaggressions with grace, choosing her battles, focusing on her work rather than neighborhood politics. That Sunday morning, Simone had gone to the hospital at 6:30 for early rounds, checking on 2 post-operative patients before heading home. She'd pulled into her driveway at 8:40. Planning to change clothes and work in her garden before the heat became oppressive. She'd gotten out of her car and walked to her mailbox at the end of the driveway to collect Saturday's mail that she hadn't retrieved. She was standing in her own driveway, on her own property, doing something she did several times a week, She had every legal right to be there. She owned the house. She owned the land. She paid the property taxes. But Officer Derek Ramsey, responding to a call about a suspicious person, saw something different. Ramsey had been with Memphis PD for 4 years, assigned to patrol in affluent neighborhoods for the past 2. His supervisors described him as conscientious about property protection, which was code for aggressive about questioning people who didn't fit his mental image of who belonged in expensive areas. In 4 years, he generated 6 formal complaints. Every single one involved a black person in a predominantly white neighborhood. A contractor's truck parked in front of a house in East Memphis. Ramsey questioned the workers, demanded to see their permits, called the homeowner to verify they'd hired black contractors. The workers were licensed and legitimate. Complaint filed, dismissed with diversity awareness training. A college student visiting his grandmother in Germantown. Ramsey stopped him while he was walking from his car to the house, demanded ID, questioned whether he really had family in this neighborhood. The young man's grandmother came outside and confirmed he was her grandson. Complaint filed, closed with community engagement workshop requirement. A real estate agent showing a property to clients in Chickasaw Gardens. Ramsey approached, questioned whether they had permission to be there, asked for identification from the black agent but not the white clients. The agent had listing authorization. Complaint filed, resolved with implicit bias training. The pattern was clear. Black people in white neighborhoods. Ramsey assumes they don't belong. Ramsey questions, demands proof, creates confrontations, complaints filed, training assigned. No actual consequences. No real accountability. Memphis PD had a file on Ramsey that documented these 6 complaints over 4 years. That's an average of 1.5 complaints per year, all following the same pattern. But the department treated each incident in isolation, never connecting them into the obvious pattern they formed. So Ramsey kept patrolling, kept questioning, kept assuming. That morning, Ramsey received a call from dispatch. Suspicious person reported in Central Gardens. Caller stated an unknown black woman was in a driveway on Carr Avenue. Caller believed it might be a break-in or trespassing. Caller insisted the homeowner was an elderly white woman. Ramsey responded within minutes. This was his specialty: protecting property, keeping neighborhoods safe, investigating suspicious activity. He pulled onto Carr Avenue and immediately spotted what the caller had reported: a black woman standing at a mailbox in the driveway of a neat suburban home. In Ramsey's mind, this didn't compute. Central Gardens, well-kept house, black woman, something's wrong. He didn't consider that the woman might own the house. He didn't think about the numerous black professionals who'd moved into historically white Memphis neighborhoods over the past decades. He didn't question the caller's assumption that the homeowner must be white. He just responded based on his pattern. See black person in white neighborhood, assume they don't belong, intervene. Ramsey pulled his patrol car to the curb and stepped out. Do you think officers should verify ownership before confronting people in their own driveways? Drop your answer below. Simone had just pulled several pieces of mail from her mailbox when she heard the car door close. She turned and saw a police cruiser. Her heart sank immediately. She'd heard stories from other black homeowners in predominantly white neighborhoods. Stories about being questioned, about having to prove they lived in their own homes. She never thought it would happen to her. The officer approached, his hand resting near his radio. "Ma'am, you need to leave this property." Simone blinked, processing the absurdity of the statement. "Excuse me? I live here." The homeowner reported someone's trespassing. Simone felt anger rise but kept her voice controlled. "I am the homeowner. This is my house." Ramsey's expression didn't change. The caller said the owner is an elderly white woman. "You don't exactly fit that description, do you?" "The caller is wrong. I'm Dr. Simone Hartley. I've lived here 12 years. She gestured toward the house. "This is my home. I own it. My name is on the deed." "Doctor, huh? Sure you are." This is where assumptions become accusations. Officer Derek Ramsey had responded to a call from a neighbor who'd made an assumption based on race. That neighbor had never met Simone, had never spoken to her, but had decided that a black woman in this driveway must not belong. And Ramsey, instead of questioning that assumption, reinforced it. "Officer, I'm not leaving my own property. If you need to verify something, check the property records. My name is on the deed. I've owned this house since 2011. I'm a cardiologist at Baptist Memorial. I've lived in Memphis my entire life. Step away from the property while I verify your claim." Simone's professional composure cracked. "My claim? This is my house. I'm standing in my own driveway. Look at this mail." She held up the stack she just retrieved. "It's all addressed to Dr. Simone Hartley at this address, because I live here." "Ma'am, I need you to..." "Who called? Was it Mrs. Henderson next door?" The woman who's lived here 3 years and has never once introduced herself? Or was it someone else who can't believe a black woman owns a house in Central Gardens? Ramsey's expression hardened. I can't disclose the caller. Of course you can't, because then I'd know exactly which neighbor assumed I was a criminal just for checking my mail. A car slowed down as it passed. The driver, an elderly white man, rolled down his window. Everything okay, officer? Ramsey turned. Just investigating a call, sir. That's Dr. Hartley. She lives there. Has for years. She's a cardiologist. The man looked at Simone. Simone, is there a problem? Simone's voice carried both gratitude and frustration. Officer Ramsey here received a call that I'm trespassing in my own driveway. The man's expression shifted to disgust. That's ridiculous. Officer, she owns that house. Check the records if you don't believe her, but don't make her prove she belongs in her own home. He drove off, shaking his head. Ramsey watched him leave, then turned back to Simone, his certainty shaken but his pride intact. I still need to verify. Then verify. Call your supervisor. Check property records. Do whatever you need to do. But I'm not leaving my driveway, and I'm not going to be treated like a criminal for checking my mail. Ramsey reached for his radio. Dispatch, I need a supervisor at 2847 Carr Avenue and run a property record check on this address. Within 7 minutes, a supervisor's vehicle arrived. Sergeant Donald Williams stepped out, a 32-year veteran who'd worked in Memphis long enough to have seen this exact scenario play out too many times. He'd read Ramsey's complaint file. He'd recommended discipline after complaint 4. He'd been overruled by command staff who didn't want to deal with union pushback. He approached and immediately assessed the situation. A well-maintained home, a woman standing calmly with mail in her hands, a patrol car blocking the driveway, no signs of criminal activity, no signs of anything except a bad call and worse judgment. Ramsey, what's happening? Anonymous call about trespassing. Subject claims to be the homeowner, but the caller said, I don't care what the caller said. Williams turned to Simone. Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Williams. I apologize for this interaction. Are you the homeowner? Simone's voice was steady, but carried the weight of her exhaustion with this situation. Yes, my name is Dr. Simone Hartley. I've owned this house for 12 years. I'm a cardiologist at Baptist Memorial. I was checking my mail when Officer Ramsey pulled up and told me to leave my own property. Williams pulled out his phone and quickly accessed the Shelby County Property Records database. Property at 2847 Carr Avenue. Simone Hartley. Purchase date 2011. No liens. Taxes current. Everything legitimate. He turned to Ramsey with barely contained frustration. She's the owner. The property records confirm it. Why didn't you check this before confronting her? The caller said, the caller was wrong, and you should have verified before accusing someone of trespassing on their own property. Williams turned back to Simone. Dr. Hartley, I sincerely apologize. This should not have happened. Officer Ramsey responded to a call without proper verification. If you wish to file a complaint, I'll provide all necessary information. Simone looked at Ramsey, then at Williams. Sergeant, this is the 6th time in 12 years I've been questioned in this neighborhood. Security companies asking if I'm the housekeeper, neighbors asking if I'm visiting someone. Now a police officer telling me to leave my own driveway. I'm a physician. I save lives for a living, and I can't check my mail without being treated like I don't belong here. Another neighbor emerged from across the street, a white woman in her 70s. Is Simone okay? Why are the police here? Williams addressed her. Ma'am, did you call about a suspicious person? No, Simone's lived here for years. She's wonderful. Who called? The question hung in the air. Someone in this neighborhood had seen Simone in her driveway and called the police. Someone had assumed criminality based on nothing but her presence. And that someone would remain anonymous while Simone dealt with the consequences. Should neighbors face consequences for false police reports based on racial assumptions? Let me know what you think. Williams spoke into his radio. Dispatch, cancel that property check. Homeowner verified. No further action needed. He turned to Ramsey. Badge and radio. You're on administrative leave pending investigation. Ramsey's face went pale. Sergeant, I was responding to a call. You responded to a call and made no attempt to verify the information before confronting a homeowner. This is your 6th complaint in 4 years. All 6 involving the same pattern. You're done patrolling until this is investigated. Badge, radio, now. Ramsey handed them over, his hand shaking. Williams addressed Simone again. Dr. Hartley, the department will conduct a full investigation. You'll have access to all reports and recordings, and I'm personally sorry this happened. Simone nodded slowly. Sergeant, I appreciate your response, but I need you to understand that this isn't just about Officer Ramsey. This is about a system that lets officers accumulate 6 complaints without consequences. This is about neighbors who call police on black people for existing in spaces they own. This is about being a homeowner for 12 years and still having to prove I belong. By that evening, Simone had contacted an attorney. By Monday morning, local news was covering the story. Cardiologist confronted by police in her own driveway. Memphis officer questions black homeowner's legitimacy. Doctor told to leave her own property after neighbors call. The medical community responded immediately. Baptist Memorial released a statement supporting Dr. Hartley. The Memphis Medical Society condemned the incident. Her patients began sharing their experiences with her. Stories of a physician who'd saved their lives, who'd worked holidays and weekends, who'd earned every bit of respect she commanded. Civil rights organizations offered support. The NAACP called for immediate action. The ACLU documented the incident as part of a pattern of racial profiling in affluent Memphis neighborhoods. Simone filed a lawsuit 3 weeks later, naming Officer Derek Ramsey, his supervisors who'd ignored 6 complaints, and Memphis PD. The allegations were specific: racial profiling and discrimination, unlawful detention, harassment, violation of property rights and Fourth Amendment protections, intentional infliction of emotional distress, deliberate indifference to Ramsey's pattern of discriminatory stops. The complaint included Ramsey's complete record: 6 complaints over 4 years, all 6 involving black residents in white neighborhoods, all dismissed with training that never changed behavior. Memphis city attorneys reviewed the case, property records proved ownership, witness statements corroborated the account. Ramsey had no legal basis for demanding Simone leave her own property. The pattern of complaints showed deliberate indifference by the department. The city settled 18 months later, $2,900,000 paid to Dr. Simone Hartley, among the largest settlements in Memphis history, for an unlawful stop on private property. Officer Derek Ramsey was terminated 10 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was direct. Officer Ramsey engaged in racial profiling of a homeowner on private property. He demanded Dr. Hartley leave her own driveway based on an unverified anonymous call. He failed to conduct basic verification before confronting a property owner. His pattern of similar conduct, documented through 6 complaints in 4 years, demonstrates inability to serve without racial bias. Employment terminated immediately. Ramsey's name entered the National Decertification Index. His 4-year law enforcement career ended. The union attempted to fight the termination. The city provided Ramsey's complaint file, witness statements, and property records. The union withdrew the appeal after reviewing the evidence. Ramsey released a brief statement. "I made serious errors and allowed assumptions to guide my actions. I apologize to Dr. Hartley." Simone testified before Memphis City Council. "I'm a physician. I've dedicated my life to healing people. I've worked 80-hour weeks for 28 years. I bought my house with money I earned through decades of service to this community. And Officer Ramsey told me to leave my own driveway because someone called and said the homeowner should be white." 6 complaints in 4 years, all involving black residents in white neighborhoods. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. A pattern your department ignored until it targeted someone with resources to fight back. She paused. $2,900,000 is what it cost to finally address one officer's 4-year pattern. But money doesn't undo being treated like a criminal in your own driveway. It doesn't erase the humiliation of having neighbors watch you prove you own your house. And it doesn't prevent the next officer with 6 complaints from doing the same thing. Memphis PD implemented reforms 10 months later. Mandatory property record verification before trespassing accusations on private property. Automatic investigation at 3 similar complaints. Body camera review for all residential confrontations. Community liaison program connecting officers with diverse neighborhood residents. Command accountability for officers with documented patterns. Why do departments treat each complaint in isolation instead of recognizing patterns? Comment your thoughts. This wasn't about one Sunday morning. This was about a department that let Derek Ramsey accumulate 6 complaints, showing the exact same bias without connecting them into the pattern they formed. The complaints were documented. The pattern was obvious. But Memphis PD treated each incident separately, never acknowledging that 6 identical complaints in 4 years meant systemic failure, not isolated mistakes. Dr. Simone Hartley paid the price. Confronted in her own driveway, forced to prove she owned her own home, treated like a trespasser on property she'd bought with decades of hard-earned money. Derek Ramsey's career is over. That's consequence. The city paid $2,900,000. That's accountability. But those measures came after 6 complaints and 4 years of the same behavior. 4 years of victims who didn't have medical degrees or property deeds to waive. 4 years of people questioned for walking, existing, living in neighborhoods Ramsey thought they didn't belong in. The real question is, what changes now? Do departments connect the dots at complaint 3 instead of waiting until complaint 6? Do they recognize patterns when officers repeatedly target the same demographic in the same context? Do they prioritize protecting citizens over protecting officers with clear biases? Because if we don't fix the system that kept Derek Ramsey patrolling for 4 years through 6 identical complaints, if we don't address the culture that treats pattern recognition as optional, then we're just waiting for the next officer with 6 complaints, the next victim, the next doctor who gets told to leave her own driveway. Comment if this should be mandatory. 3 similar complaints within 3 years triggers automatic investigation and potential termination. No more isolated treatment. Pattern recognition becomes policy. And if you believe these stories matter, if you think 6 complaints over 4 years should have resulted in action after complaint 3, then hit that subscribe button. We're exposing departments that ignore obvious patterns. We're demanding better. We're fighting for homeowners who deserve to exist in their own driveways without proving they belong. This isn't about one officer or one doctor. It's about systems that let patterns continue and the people who pay the price for that willful blindness.